Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is a review of the 2010 sequel, Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps. If you ask me, the film should have its tagline retitled to The Audience Always Sleeps, because this film is an incredible bore. This is such a boring, insufferable sequel. It drags and drags and drags. It doesn't have any of the same energy or verve or life that the first film had. Uh, the first film, Wall Street, is one of the finest films about finances in existence. This is one of the worst that I've seen because it completely misses the boat and misses what made the first film such a enduring and popular film, even to this day. It doesn't have any of the same charisma, doesn't have any of the same charm. It's one of those sequels where it's a poster child for why is this the way it is? Because if you're gonna have a sequel to Wall Street, this is definitely not how you do it. So Oliver Stone comes back, directs the film, but he has none of the same strive or passion for the project as he did with the first movie. And it honestly feels like he just did this for a paycheck because it's very lifeless, zombie direction, just going through the paces. There's a few shots of the city that look pretty good. There's some other shots that visually aren't that bad, but it's just one of those films where, other than that, it just doesn't have the it factor that the first film had. I think at this point in time, Oliver Stone as a director was kind of starting to fall off anyway, so this was just more of a prime example of his decline in terms of his directing, in terms of his ability and his talent. It happens to the best of them. And I don't think the screenplay did him any favors, though, by Alan Loeb and Stephen Schiff. I honestly think this screenplay is a fucking mess, and I think this screenplay is honestly the biggest reason why this film is a total bomb. It's a total stinker. It's a flop. It's one of those sequels that just totally crashes. It's the sequel equivalent of a stock market crash, and the reason why is because of the screenplay by these two individuals. There's too many fucking plot lines and threads going on throughout this movie, and none of them are particularly that compelling or interesting. So why do we have so many of these things going on? Choose one and flesh it out more and build it up more, or just don't have 50 fucking plot threads going on at once. Especially ones that aren't really that compelling or enthralling or enticing. Um, what I mean is that you have the subplot with Shia LaBeouf's character, uh, Jacob Moore, and there's something that happened with the company that he worked for. I think it was Zabel. Yeah, it was KZI. So it was like some kind of Keller Zabel Investments. So he's a broker and he works for KZI. The His mentor is Zabel himself, who's played by Frank Langella. And so what happens is some kind of, not necessarily corruption, but a competing broker business screws him over, causes KZI to collapse, ends up causing Jacob the loss of his job as well as the loss of his mentor because he kills himself because he can't take it. And that starts this subplot of revenge where Shia LaBeouf wants revenge on the rival businessman and his company, Brett and James, who's played by Josh Brolin. So he wants revenge on him. So he actually gets a job with him. And there's this whole sort of, oh, he's going to get revenge and screw him over from the inside. But that gets pretty muddled as the film goes on, and then it honestly drops that in favor of another subplot. The other subplot involves Gordon Gekko. He's gotten out of prison after serving time for insider trading. Apparently, Bud Fox is not the one that turned him in, it was somebody else. And the person that turned him in was Bretton James. And so he's out of prison, and Shia LaBeouf's character, Jacob, gets in contact with him because Jacob is engaged with Gekko's daughter, Winnie, played by Carey Mulligan. So there's this whole subplot that's going on now about Gordon trying to reunite or to reestablish the relationship with his estranged daughter, Winnie, and Shia LaBeouf's character, Jacob, is helping him with that. So you have that, and then while that is going on, while you have the revenge thing, while you have the whole reestablishment of the relationship thing, then you have this plot about green energy, about fusion, and then you're just like, what are we doing, movie? Like, the first film was simple, it was straightforward, it was a story about the corruption of the American dream. It did not need to be any more complicated than that. And it was as effective as you could possibly ask it to be as a result. When you make things more complicated with dramas like this, more often than not, it doesn't work out. So you have all these fucking plot lines going on, and then it's all revealed, of course. Michael Douglas, because then there's another problem with the screenplay. Michael Douglas is in this movie. Gordon Gekko is in the film. It's featured prominently in the posters, featured prominently in the trailers, which is understandable because he's a drawing force for anyone that is remotely even curious about this sequel. They want to see it for Michael Douglas. They want to see it for Gordon Gekko. You don't get your money's worth at all when it comes to Gordon Gekko. He's in the background of his own franchise for some dumb inane reason, and this is honestly an extended cameo role for Michael Douglas in a Wall Street movie, because Shia LaBeouf, he has way more screen time than Gordon Gekko, than Michael Douglas. At least that's how it appears. And Carey Mulligan also has more screen time. And if that isn't bad enough, the scenes with Michael Douglas are all this really pitful and see-through kind of charade with the character of Gordon Gekko, where he's rehabilitated, he's on the track to becoming a better person, he's humbled, greed is no longer good, like, and you can see right through it. And by an hour, the film takes an hour and 50 minutes until it finally reveals that, yeah, it's all a bunch of bullshit, that he's actually not turned a new leaf, and he's still as corrupt and as slimy as ever. But at that point, we're an hour and 50 minutes into a film that's over 2 hours. Who cares? Who gives a fuck at that point? And when that turn does happen, it's nowhere near as satisfying. It's nowhere near as entertaining or as enjoyable in terms of the debauchery or the villainy that it really should have been. Like, for instance, in Wall Street, Gordon Gekko's a slimy snake, but you love watching him work. You love watching him slither around and wrap his trying to think of the right word. You love seeing him slither around and suffocate people and suck people's fucking skulls. You love seeing that shit, and you can tell that Michael Douglas is really enjoying playing that kind of role. And as an audience, you definitely get that sense. You get that feel. And when the turn happens here and he slicks his hair back like Pat Riley, it just has none of the same energy. It's none of the same unbridled anger and passion and insanity. It has none of that. So even that is boring. Like, how do you make Gordon Gekko boring? This is how you make Gordon Gekko boring. You suck his soul right out of his body. And then the ending is trying to do this, like, oh, they're trying to make you sympathize with Gordon Gekko after he's essentially screwed over his daughter, stole money from her, lied to her, took off to London somewhere. He's going to start his new empire, and they're trying to make you sympathize with him because now Winnie is pregnant with his grandson, and Jacob's trying to offer him one last trade, like give her the money back, and then you'll get to see the grandson. This is my trade, the money for the grandson. And he's like, I can't do that, and then the film has weird mixed messages. Where it's trying to make you sympathize with him, and then at the end of the movie, there's a scene where Jacob and Winnie, they've broken up at this point because of what's going on with Gordon Gekko, and Gordon then just pops up out of nowhere. It just teleports onto the scene, and all he has to do to get back into their lives is to say, I want to be a father. I want to be a grandfather, and I want to be a father. You know, I want to try to make it work. And then that's all he has to do, because by the fucking end credits of this movie, everything is like super bright and colorful. There's like bright colors everywhere. There's fucking bubbles. There's fucking bubbles in the air floating through the fucking sky, and happy music, and Gordon Gekko smiling, you know, and Winnie and Jacob with their grandson, and Gekko's like, oh, I get to see my grandson. There's bubbles, and it's a new day, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, are you fucking kidding me with this screenplay, with this shitty script? Pick a tone and stick with it. Otherwise, it's terrible. It's not only terrible to witness, but it's also terrible in terms of storytelling. It's trying to also have stuff about the recession, about the 2008 crash, the housing market crash, and they're trying to pin it all on Josh Brolin's character because of some shady dealings he was doing. So that's another plot that's going on. There's way too many fucking plots going on in this screenplay. And like I said, none of them are effective or that particularly interesting. And then the characters. The characters are weak. Shia LaBeouf, he's a pretty talented actor, but this character, Jacob, is a sad sack loser. Who cares if he makes it, or he loses all his money, or he loses his girlfriend? I don't give a shit. Unlike with Bud Fox, he was cool. Like, you actually were... There was something about him that was a natural draw. There's nothing about Shia LaBeouf's character that is a natural draw, and I don't think he was cast well either. I think it was definitely an example of miscasting, because I feel Shia LaBeouf, he just gets absolutely annihilated and eaten alive by almost every single person in this cast. Any scene that he's in with Michael Douglas, he's immolated. He doesn't stand a fucking chance. Any scene that he's in with even Carey Mulligan, he's getting destroyed. Any sequence he's in with Josh Brolin, he's getting knocked for a loop, and he's getting knocked out of the park. You can't have a main character like this be such a dope and at the same time have no screen presence and get completely fucking destroyed and overtaken and upstaged by pretty much anyone in the entire cast. Charlie Sheen was able to go toe-to-toe with Michael Douglas. Shia LaBeouf shows up in scenes with Michael Douglas and gets knocked the fuck out. So that's definitely a problem. And I think part of it is Shia LaBeouf's performance. Another part of it is the screenplay and the way that the character is written. Then you have Carey Mulligan, who plays Winnie Gekko, and I don't think the performance is particularly bad or awful, but I don't think it's particularly great either. I think a lot of her performance is mostly her just crying, and at times it's a little annoying. And the character just seems like she's overly emotional, and Mulligan, she did a good job of what she was asked to do in that instance. Like, she's supposed to be an emotional character, so she definitely did provide those emotions. But and there's a lot of other stuff with this character that I don't really like. For one, the character seems to hold on to things way too much. Like, she's willing to completely just destroy whatever relationship she has left, whatever connection she has left in her life, which is Jacob, because of her convictions and how pissed off she is about her father. It's like, get over it already. Grow up. And, but then it's something that I guess it's trying to show. Like, it seems like the script is trying to show that she has a reason to be this way, but things aren't really ever really resolved in a way that's particularly that satisfying, because by the end of the movie her father just shows up, and he's a big reason why they get back to by why she and Jacob get back together again. He says something like, you make a good couple, and then Shia makes a move on her, and they're back together. And it's kind of like, so I get why they broke up initially, because it was about trust. Shia lied to her, didn't tell her the truth about how he was hanging out with Gordon prior to the meeting that he had with him, that she believed was the first time that they met. But as the film goes on, you realize why he didn't tell her, because she can't handle it. So if he did say that, she would get all triggered about it and get overly emotional and break off the engagement. So if he did tell the truth, they would be screwed. So it's one of those things where a lot of the drama with this character of Winnie, it's a lot of, you don't really give a shit at the end of the day. A lot of it's like, get over it, and either cut him off or do whatever you need to do, but just deal with it. Why do you need to take the entire film's running time for you to deal with these emotions? Like, it's just like, I get it, but at the same time, this isn't technically real life, so we don't need to take that long for a grown woman to grow up. I'm just saying, that's just how I feel about that particular character. And the performance is an extension of that, so it's really difficult for me to criticize the actress that harshly, because she's doing what the script is asking her to do, and she does a good job portraying that character, but it's just not a very likable character for a multitude of reasons, and therefore it's not really that likable of a performance. Even Frank Langella, who I like, his character's just shouty old guy. That's really all he is. He's shouty old guy who works at this company, and shit hits the fan, and he's just angry and bitter. That's all he is. And then he kills himself. I'm supposed to care, despite the fact that I don't really know that much about this character at all. You have Susan Sarandon. Yes, Susan Sarandon is in this. She plays Jacob's mother, and she's just barely in the movie. She plays a real estate agent. By the way, the real estate agent, the real estate gal that was in Wall Street, she has a cameo in this. was fun to see her, but doesn't save the film by any means. And so Susan Sarandon's in the. She's a great actress, and she's wasted in this film. She has a nothing role. She didn't even need to be in the movie. There wasn't even really a point to her character. What her character arc just consisted of, she's greedy. She is biting off more than she can chew with these real estate deals. She should go back to being a nurse and realizing and understanding what's important once again. It's a little bit for the storyline, the story arc for Jacob, so he can finally put his foot down and stop giving his mom money. And ultimately, she gets the point, quits, goes back to work as a nurse. That's all the fucking plot is, and that's all her character is. Pointless. Cut her out of the movie. Definitely would have helped the film's pacing, which is incredibly slow. It's a very slow film, despite all the flashy visuals. And then, of course, you got Josh Brolin's character. He's just a mustache-twirling bad guy. That's really all he is. That's all his character is. And that's really what your cast is. There's a few other actors and actresses, but no one really worth mentioning, in my opinion. Except for Charlie Sheen, who has a cameo as Bud. And I'm wondering if these screenwriters even saw Wall Street. I really am wondering that, because when the sequence shows up in the film where Gordon reunites with Bud, Bud is acting like they're fucking buddies. They're hobnobbing with one another. He's like, "Hey, pal. Hey, buddy. How you doing? How you doing, Gordo?" And you're like, didn't these two get in a fist fight at the end of the first movie? Didn't Bud essentially get wiretapping? He was wired, and the film tries to insinuate what Bud did wasn't really that big of a deal, which really, what a way to cheapen the first movie, by the way. The whole sequence where he puts a wire on in the first movie is completely devoid of any real impact now. Nice one, film, because they basically say, oh, Michael Douglas's character Gordon Gekko's like, oh, that didn't really do, Bud, that didn't really do that much. It's the insider trading that I got, 9 years for. It's like, so Bud, all the stuff that he didn't amount to anything? Really? And then, yeah, it's just so unrealistic that these two would be hobnobbing and like palling, just shaking each other's hands, and Charlie Sheen's Bud's bragging about how he sold the company, he sold Blue Star and made a good profit, which that also is fucking ridiculous, because why would he do that? After all that he fucking went through in the first film, all of this shit, going to fucking prison, doing the right thing, he still sells Blue Star? What's different between Bud selling Blue Star and Gordon trying to sell it and gut it? What the hell is the difference between the two? It's just like, these screenwriters don't fucking get it. They don't understand. And it's nice to see Charlie Sheen. And in that scene alone, it shows you so much. It really does reveal how deep in the weeds and deep in the deep end Shia LaBeouf is in this movie. Because even that one little cameo scene, Charlie Sheen is showing more charisma, more energy than anything that Shia LaBeouf can bring to the table. And honestly, that's more of what people wanted to see. Charlie Sheen and Michael Douglas. What are those characters doing? What is Bud Fox doing now after he got out of prison, after he served his time? What is Gordon Gekko doing? Maybe have them butt heads again. Or maybe if you don't want to have Charlie Sheen, have James Brolin be a character like that. Because James Brolin has more of a presence. James Brolin, he can, in my opinion, have a little bit more of that intensity. Shia LaBeouf tries to have scenes where he's intense, but it's not believable. It just isn't. Comes across as incredibly forced and strained. But yeah, that scene, the cameo scene, was fun to see Charlie Sheen, but that scene was really awkward. It did not feel like it was Bud Fox at all. It just felt like it was Charlie Sheen playing himself. And like, it just proves to me that the screenwriters for this film, they saw Wall Street maybe years ago, but are just writing the script based off of memory, or they just saw some clips on TV, but never actually saw the whole movie, let alone understood what it was about. Because if they did, they wouldn't have this scene where Bud Fox, after everything he went through, after all of this sacrifice, just as soon as he sees Gordon Gekko, just like, how you doing, pal? Like, what the fuck? Should have punched him in the face. Just like I want to punch this movie in the face. This film is definitely proof that without a doubt you can have the original filmmakers involved in a sequel and it can still suck. Oliver Stone is back, but it doesn't make any difference. Like, you could have another director who wasn't involved with the first film in any capacity and it would suck just as much. In fact, it's even more disappointing because Oliver Stone is back in the director's chair. You have these scenes in the film, there's too many of these scenes that are just winks and nods to Wall Street people. Like, there's a guy who I think he's a part of Wall Street, but he's a horrible actor. He comes across as a cartoon. Then there's other cameos from Wall Street people. Apparently, Donald Trump had a cameo, but it was removed from the theatrical cut. Just all these cameos and shit. And it's like, I think the first film had some, but it wasn't to this extent where the film like stops to show the Mad Money guy. It's like, I don't fucking care. Even if I was in the Wall Street sector, why would I care about this glad-handing Wall Street bullshit? I think I would rather want a more compelling and legitimately interesting and engaging and entertaining plot. None of this is helping anything. And then there's also just really questionable, quite frankly, silly lines of dialogue and silly sequences. So there's a scene later in the film where Jacob is trying to convince his fiancée Winnie to take the inheritance, the $100 million that she supposedly has from Gordon, and put it into this fusion energy project. And in this scene, Jacob comes across like a fucking psychopath. He's going in and he's like, you could be Captain America. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. I'm not making that up. That's how that scene plays out. He looks like a fucking nutjob who just escaped from the asylum, and she like accepts it. That convinces her. What? Bitch, please. How does that convince anybody? That's the opposite of convincing. That is the epitome of an unconvincing speech and argument, because you look like a absolute psycho. This movie just burns my balls and my butt. This is the equivalent of just having like a whole rack of cash and just lighting it on fire. Man. The only thing that I would say that I actually liked and I thought was somewhat memorable about this movie was the music. I thought this had some really good songs, original songs by David Byrne from the Talking Heads. So I liked the songs. I wish they were in a better movie, but yeah, songs weren't really a problem. The score by Greg Armstrong, there's really like he only scores like maybe 3 scenes, so I wouldn't. It's not anything particularly uh, worth of note or worthy of listening to on its own. The cinematography by Rodrigo Prieto. Some of the sequences that take place at night that show the nightclub um, scene and a few other New York hot spots. It looks really good, and some of the other sequences are shot in the city, but it's still nothing that as a whole is particularly eye popping. The editing, workmanlike job by Julie Monroe and David Brenner. The film was way too fucking long, 133 minutes. This did not need to be 133 minutes, especially not this particular hodgepodge of plot lines. Um, and for some reason, though, it made money. It cost $70 million and made $134 million in the box office. What I don't know why. I guess the pull of Michael Douglas and the fact there was another Wall Street got enough people willing to go see it. This is such a forgettable, boring, and just uh, failed sequel in so many different ways. And I just I just don't know why. I still don't know why that they went with this particular approach. If you're going to do a Wall Street sequel, give the audience what they want. Give the audience what they're asking for. The Wall Street fans were greedy for more Gordon Gekko, not less Gordon Gekko. Not some fake rehabilitated Gordon Gekko for the majority of the movie, and then uh, a somewhat rehabilitated Gordon Gekko by the end, who's smiling happily with fucking bubbles in the air, with his grandson in his arms. No, nobody. That's not what people asked for. So if you're gonna do another Wall Street, give them what they ask for. Gordon Gekko gets out of prison, and the film is about his rise back up the ranks. It's about him getting revenge upon the guy who fucked him over and sent him to prison. And then maybe you can bring in Bud Fox's character at some point and have some sort of dynamic with the two. You can have maybe some realization by the end of the movie that greed isn't good and that he's really taken things too far because now it's caused him to be estranged with his daughter, his only daughter, and he realizes that it's not worth it. And there are things in his life that are worth more than money, power, and greed. And he'd rather be greedy in terms of the love for his daughter than anything else. Maybe he torpedoes his own a company and in the process also sinks his rival, and then he quits it all together and decides to work with his daughter. You can maybe even bring in Bud Fox, and he's the one that's in a relationship with his daughter, but he doesn't know that it's Gekko's daughter because she's not telling him the truth. You can have that sort of thing going on, or you could have a different character who's in that relationship. You could even have Shia LaBeouf again, or you could switch the roles and have James Brolin play that role. But no, instead we got this just boring slog of a sequel that does not give the audience at all what they were asking for when it comes to a Wall Street sequel. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't recommend this one. Even if you're a fan of Wall Street, or if you just saw the first film for the first time and you're curious about it, I honestly still don't recommend it. You're not missing anything, except a massive waste of your time. But hey, if you're that curious about it, check it out. I don't recommend it, but if you're that curious about it, still give it a look, because you never know, you might like it more than I did. But whew, boy, this is, I honestly got to rank this pretty high on my list of worst sequels, because it's fucking worthless. It's a worthless Wall Street sequel. It's definitely not worth the money, and it's definitely not worth the price that you pay if you decide to sit down and watch it. Anyway, thank you for watching my rant and my review of Wall Street. The audience always sleeps. And as always, I will see you later. See ya.